Welcome to episode 21 of the SWISSUES podcast on podcasting. Amy Jones, a panelist in previous podcast, is planning her own podcast and wants to ask about SWISSUES experiences. In this episode, I think you'll agree that Amy is a natural at interviewing and podcasting, so I'm really looking forward to the launch of her own. Please subscribe to SWISSUES.com to keep updated on all your podcasts and events. Welcome to the SWISSUES podcast. I'm here with Amy Jones, and Amy has a few questions about podcasting. I thought she should talk to an expert, but she's talking to me.
Well, I'm talking to you for a reason, Bill. I mean, you have your podcast SWISSUES set up, right, and I was fortunate enough to take part, which I really appreciated. And it actually reignited my aim to do a podcast, which I had the idea quite some years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago. And due to work and life, it kind of fell to the wayside. And now you've really reignited that interest. So I'd love to talk to you about your experience with podcasting and your insight to that.
Okay, well, look, Amy, you fire away with a few questions and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, great. So, Bill, you have set up the podcast SWISSUES about 2 years ago, I think.
Yep.
I would love to know, how did you start that off? Why did that come into existence?
It started because when SIP Switzerland faced lockdown during the COVID, we went online. It suddenly became obvious that although people had been using video conferencing and online facilities for quite a while, that we were not very good at it.
Oh, gosh.
People's presentation skills online were actually quite poor. Self-awareness seemed to disappear. Preparation seemed to be less than if they were going to a normal meeting. I'm being hard just to make a point. It seemed to me that there was scope for doing something, not so much to get an audience, but to help the panelists, the people talking, become more self-aware, hear themselves and think, ooh, that could have been done better. This is the way it should be done. That's where the idea came from originally.
Yeah, so SWISSUES, it seems like it provides a community service, in fact. So people have the opportunity to come to your podcast and experience live presentation mode, but online.
Yeah. And there's a number of things that I guess I've found out during that period about how to do it. I mean, you're the expert, far, far more expert than I on presenting and talking and making an impression. But the things that I've begun to learn are that you really do have to prepare.
Yes, yes.
In little sound bites or epithets. I call them word pictures because you're trying to find a few words that will tell a story, but also create an image in people's minds. And so people hear, sometimes it is like there's a cliche, out of a clear blue sky. That's just a cliche.
Yes.
But suddenly you have an image of something moving towards you out of. A blue sky has an image, and little expressions like that leave the listener waiting for what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and in the absence of maybe a visual input, it's a really helpful and powerful aid. And in fact, you, when I was coming on your podcast about Race to the Bottom of the Brainstem, you gave an email with some guidance on how to prepare for the podcast and how to come across on the podcast, which I found very helpful. And that was 5-second rule. So start with your conclusion, basically get to the point, which I absolutely love. And to give verbal markers. So, such as these 3 things, or the pros and cons of this would be that, which really helps when you're in the midst of a podcast, and just to have these kind of direction signs helps with kind of the structure within the podcast. And then pub talk, so the simple language, which is often more powerful and can be listened to much, much easier.
I said pub talk instead of saying Anglo-Saxon. Okay. Anglo-Saxon words are the simple words. English is obviously 2 or 3 different languages, and the Anglo-Saxon side tend to be the commoner words. And the Latinate words from Latin and French tend to be the slightly longer multi-syllable words that people use less often.
I read a lot of fiction books, novels, and if I compare the American novelists compared to the English novelists, the American novelists are very good at the direct and simple language. And I think often it's more difficult than using much more flowery language and more descriptive language. It's actually more of an art. So I found that guidance very helpful. It certainly focused my mind on, the direction of the podcast and how we were going to interact together. Do you find it difficult or challenging ever to get people to come on the podcast? Are people quite open to that? How do you find the reception?
Ask directly, people will, but they won't volunteer.
Yes. Okay.
There's a small group now that are comfortable with it, but it's very hard to get people to volunteer.
I think there's a certain reticence or lack of confidence that people have in their ability to do this.
Yes, it is. A lot of people are a little bit concerned, well, firstly, about it going public.
Yes.
Afraid everyone will watch it and criticize them. And secondly, maybe afraid of people don't like hearing their own voice. That's
That is
common.
true.
Yeah.
That is true.
You can make it and you don't have to listen to it. It is about self-improvement. I mean, that was, as I said, the original intention. It was to help people to look at the camera, to talk directly, and to learn how the technology works. And we really ought to talk about the technology a little bit. I don't know if that's on your agenda, but it is quite important.
It really is on my agenda. Speaking about technology, we were just talking about how you're recording this, which I think we're recording this on Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom is very good. Zoom's a premium service. I think it's better than Teams and Meet.
Yes.
It is one that you can install on your own computer, like those two, or use the web. It is one that will record on separate tracks to your own computer. If you want to record separate tracks, they have to be on your own computer. They won't do it
Okay, and when you say separate tracks, you mean a different track for each speaker?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, that enables you to edit. We'll talk about editing in a minute, perhaps, Amy, because that's really important. When you want to edit, it is so much easier if you're looking at the sine wave on the screen in front of you. It's separate sine waves for each person talking, and you can cut the sound out from somebody else and leave it in for one person, or you can edit it when they're all fully synced. And you can put it into stereo. So each person is in a different part of the room. That's probably unnecessary, but I like doing it for the fun of it.
Okay. I noticed your skill in editing because we recorded our podcast, I think, on the Thursday evening. And by Friday lunchtime, you'd published it. And I was amazed at the quick turnaround. So how are you doing the editing so quickly?
I use Audacity. Audacity, Audacity. It is absolutely brilliant. It's free. It's open source software. And it goes on to Windows or Linux or whatever you're on.
I've used Audacity myself, and this was quite some years ago. I also found it quite easy to use. It's got a bit of a retro look and feel, I would say. I don't know if that's still the case, but I found it quite good and quite easy. I know there's other editing software now that do things like they'll do an AI audio cleanup. So it will balance the levels, reduce background noise, which honestly, I listen to some podcasts that are meant to be professionally produced. The balance between the speakers, like one is really like a whisper and the other one's really loud, and which is quite disturbing. And I'm really surprised that they haven't got that under control.
Yeah, all of those things can be adjusted on Audacity, and I prefer to do it manually. I really do. And there's so much manual work to do, taking out the ums and the ahs and the repeats, the stuff that has to be edited out. There's a lot of it.
So you do a lot of editing. Do you edit a lot of content out as well to make it flow better?
I do. Not important content. Sometimes people are just filling space.
Yes.
And they really, like now, I am just, if I say and, or I'm not sure that, I would take all of that sort of stuff out. I find it difficult to over-edit. You can be really, really aggressive, and it improves the pace of the delivery, pace of the final podcast.
Yeah.
And to me, it works. Maybe other people find it's too rapid, but I find it works.
No, I can well imagine. In fact, I mean, we were talking a bit earlier, I think before we started recording about whether, to use video or not. And a lot of podcasts are going in the direction of using videos.
Yeah.
The only reason I can think that they're doing this is they're almost like making mini TV programs out of it, and they're putting it on YouTube, which pays the content creator more than if you just put it on the podcast platforms. I don't know why they would. When I'm listening to a podcast, I'm out walking or running, or I'm doing something else. Basically, I might be cooking. I don't want to watch something. And what I think is when the video is on, it somehow slows down the interaction. It might just be me, but I really like a podcast where there's a lot of content, there's a lot of deep discussion and details and back and forth. If you just get to more of a TV show where it's very light, it doesn't interest me.
You and I both. Yeah, that's why I really do like the audio version.
Yeah.
And yes, it's the video ones, the vlogs are designed for YouTube.
You managed to do the editing really quickly, and I guess you're doing it really quickly each time. How are you doing it so well and quickly?
I don't think it's done that well, but I have learned how to do it. It does take me about half or a third of the time it used to take me.
Yeah.
It used to take several days.
Yes, I can imagine. Yeah.
As many hours.
Okay.
Well, I do one for my son, who does something on the South Downs in England.
Yes.
And it's about World War II activities that happened in the Weald and South Downs of Sussex.
Is it as a public podcast?
A public podcast.
And what's it called?
South Down Stories.
South Down Stories. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, I'll send you the link.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm getting a bit of practice at that.
Yeah,
he does it outside, so you've got wind and noise to cope with and all the rest of it.
Yeah, because you often hear on podcasts people talk about their editor and their producer, and they're obviously sending it off for it to be done professionally. Often I do not hear the difference between the ones that have been done supposedly professionally and the ones that have been done by the host themselves. And I'm wondering if that personal care and understanding of the discussion actually really helps the quality in the editing process, whereas it becomes a bit more industrial if you pay somebody else to do it.
I think learning to use Audacity and doing it manually is the answer. Right. There are tools that will do it automatically. I don't trust them. And as you say, I think people who are doing it, who've used them, find that the quality is no better than doing it manually. And since you have to go through and edit out stuff, and you have to use that personal human judgment about what should stay in and what shouldn't. Yeah. So you might as well do the full editing job. You're there anyway.
I'm with you, Bill. I totally agree. And I think that that's what gives it that personal and quality touch that really makes a podcast stand out better from, others that haven't got that. So the good news is Audacity is free. So that's, that makes the cost of making a podcast much less than it could be. I think the other editing softwares, there may be between $20 and $40 a month or something like that. It's not going to break the bank, but all these costs add up.
They do add up. Yeah. And I always go for free.
Yeah. And we talked about, and actually this was where we kind of identified our shared interest in podcasting. We talked about sound quality because I have a proper mic and I was doing these voiceovers and I wanted it to be good quality. And I bought a proper microphone with tripod. And I was saying, that I've also filled my office with cushions to absorb the sound. And I was just looking up today as well about what, if you don't have like a sound booth, what can you do? Interestingly, a square-shaped office is the worst shape you can have because then the sound really bounces off all four walls. A rectangular office is much better, which is what I've got. Just coincidentally. And I've put the cushions in and put some extra carpet down because obviously in Switzerland we've always got parquet instead of carpets. I think in the UK it would be easier with much carpets everywhere, even in the bathroom. That's how we got into it. And I really can't listen to a podcast if the audio quality is not very good.
Yeah, you've done exactly the right thing in looking for soft furnishings. I couldn't. I'm in a basement. It really is not suitable for soft furnishings.
Right.
So there are some things you have to do. You don't need an expensive microphone, but you do need a microphone. You should never, ever use two things: the microphone that's built into a laptop or the microphone that dangles from earbuds. So you do need a microphone. One that's attached in a headset is quite good because it's well positioned. I'm using one that's on a boom. Mm-hmm. It should be about 10 centimeters from your mouth and slightly to one side to avoid the pops. That works quite well. If you're using anything else, then you do tend to pick up resonance. from the
Yes.
room. Now, I'm in a resonant room, but
Okay.
it's
But
not too
you
bad.
don't hear it on your podcast, you don't hear it. So you must be doing something in the editing process to reduce or eliminate that
Not
sound.
really. I think it's
Mm.
basically the good positioning of the microphone's
Good
important.
positioning.
I have recommended to people to buy a headset. Doesn't have to be an
Yes. And
expensive
it
one.
doesn't, I mean, I'm using my kind of call center headset, that
Yeah.
I've used for a million Teams calls. And it's just on one side of my ear, actually. And I'm using my microphone. And it's actually talking to you that, we identified if you use a speaker as for your audio inputs, then the computer has to work out,
Yeah.
oh, I'm hearing that from there. And
Yes.
there's a little bit of catch up time, which makes for bad sound quality as well.
Yes,
So,
that's another really important point.
yeah.
Don't use audio speakers. Use some sort of headphone to feedback. Otherwise, as you say, the software in your system has to do far too much work to avoid
Yeah.
feedback.
There is a podcaster, quite a well-known one, Adam Buxton, he sends his guests a microphone
Oh, does he?
he sends it out to them. In fact, he was quite offended because his friend Louis Theroux made a disparaging comment about the good microphone because he said it wasn't, it was just an old microphone. And Adam Buxton was a bit put out by that because he'd taken the trouble to send him a good microphone and it hadn't been appreciated. That's quite interesting. But I guess if your podcast is a huge commercial endeavor and your livelihood, you might as well take the extra, and as we said, a microphone's not incredibly expensive, maybe 40 or 50 Swiss francs or dollars, because it's
Yeah.
all equal at the
Yeah.
moment.
You
So,
get an excellent headset with microphone built in for $40 to $50.
wow.
And that will include noise cancellation and all the rest of it. But you don't really need that. In fact, you don't want it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it includes that.
I mean, it's amazing actually how little you need to do a podcast. I mean, I think you need the ability to learn and to do the software, and which is all very learnable. You can
Hmm.
Google the answers to most things. You need a little bit of tenacity, but much more. It's not a huge financial outlay, and this might explain why it seems like everybody's got a podcast, but there's still a lot of people not listening to podcasts. So I still think there's a huge growth potential, even if you only have a small niche audience. If they appreciate it and you enjoy doing it, why not? Why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in your case, you're kind of providing a community service that people have the opportunity to have the experience of being on a podcast. And I think that's really fantastic. There was a couple of specialist questions I wanted to ask you. I noticed your music. I think the first music was kind of drums, and it was very cool, confident, even a little nonchalant. And then you changed it to violin, which was very dynamic and exciting. And I had a couple of questions. I wondered, how did you choose the music? Where did you find it? Were there any issues related to rights, or did you have it made? Why did you change? Was it to represent a new year, or?
I don't know why it changed. I think we'd done 10 episodes with one and changed to another.
Mhm.
It came from Spotify. Most of the platforms come with music that you can use.
Ah,
And that's all
okay.
I did.
It's
It was
interesting,
free.
but you don't hear the same music on different podcasts because you would
No.
think, a bit like website templates, you might start seeing the same thing over and over again.
Mm.
But I've never come across that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
again, a very easy thing to do.
very, very easy.
I was thinking, oh, you maybe had to have this music made because you do hear about people getting an orchestra in and making the music.
I did try and actually play music for it. I brought a guitar down and tried to play a few chords. I'm not up to
Oh,
doing a melody. It was awful. So I gave that
oh,
idea up.
but a very nice idea. And I think you still could go back to that.
No.
Oh, because there's a podcast that it's not really live at the moment, but she's got the back catalogue. So
Uh,
Grief Cast by Carrie Lloyd.
oh,
She's quite a well-known comedian actually, and she talks to people who've had a loss in their life, and I found it a really helpful podcast, really sensitive and really nice. And she had a band do her music, so she actually commissioned a
uh,
band for her music. So
I think that's a brilliant idea. If someone's thinking of doing a podcast,
yes.
and they want to put a bit of music in, and it can be used to break it up. Don't be put off. There is piles of free stuff
Yeah.
on platforms like Spotify that you can use.
Perfect. And your music's brilliant. I think it really represents the SWISSUES podcast and it gives a good kind of punchy start. I do like it when a podcast starts with just a little bit of music, just, that you know which one you're listening to and that you're about to start. Because sometimes when they have the adverts, I have to fast forward through them.
I mentioned Southdown Stories, one my son does, and I put different soundtracks into each of his.
Oh.
The first time it was about a Junkers, was it a Junkers 88? German bomber that had crashed, and there's a memorial on the South Downs to the pilot. I put, as a soundtrack, I had the sound of the Junkers 88.
Oh, amazing. Oh.
And that worked quite well.
Yeah.
And then there was another one where I put in the regimental music of whoever they're talking about. So
fabulous.
The latest one is on D-Day, or it's Commandos at Cowdray. It's about the commandos training for D-Day. There's a famous story as Lord Lovat is coming up the beach at Sword in Normandy, and his piper plays Highland Laddie.
Oh, how beautiful. How
and
lovely.
So I put that in as a soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. What a lovely idea. Fantastic. Bill, I also want to talk to you about another technical aspect, which is the hosting and distribution of the podcast. So I know there's different ways of doing that. I think a lot of people use a hosting platform, which will, it's like a home for the podcast of the sound. And then that will distribute out to, the podcast players such as Spotify or Apple. I use Podcast Addict because it's free and it's good. It does the job. I get the podcasts I want to find. And I think that these platforms, got some of the names here like Resonate, Podbean, Buzzsprout, they will like automatically distribute to all of the platforms on which you can find your podcasts. So what do you use?
Well, I changed. I used Spotify.
Yep.
It's Spotify for Creators, which is a sort of amateur one. It was very good. It was Anchor originally, but it was bought over by Spotify. But then I wanted to change the whole SWISSUES thing, so I moved to Substack. I wanted to move towards a social media type site for stories and content. And Substack seemed better for that. They include a podcast ability. So when you post something, you can post it either as a podcast or a video, I think, or as a story. Move the whole lot over to that. You can change it so easily. It does it automatically. You just feed the links in and off it goes.
Amazing. And when it was on Spotify, was it also available on other podcast providers or was it exclusive on Spotify?
On all of these things, you can link them to the other podcasts and they're automatically picked up. Okay. You have to put in a code that you just get the code and feed it in and off it goes.
Right.
It happens automatically every time. You don't have to go and do it for each one.
Yeah. And I got the impression that you basically, you record your podcast and then you edit it and you distribute it straight out, because I read something that Monday, Tuesdays and Wednesdays are the best days to publish.
I didn't know that.
Well, I didn't know that either. And I haven't quite got to the bottom of why that may be, but maybe there is no answer. But that's what the internet told me.
Right. I didn't know that. And because we don't really have much of an audience, I sometimes occasionally joke about the listener. We don't have much of an audience. It's a bit specialist. It's probably the panelists and their family. If we go for an audience, then we'll have to think much harder about that.
Yeah. Do you get statistics from the platform or from the hosting on, who your listeners are?
They all tell you. Yeah. And you can see what's been popular and what hasn't, and how long after you posted it that people look at it. Or if you send out an email or a social media thing, you can see in the hours after you sent it out.
Have you seen any interesting patterns?
You're talking to the wrong person, Amy, because we really do have very few listeners and it's not enough to form any judgment about what works and what doesn't.
Because I love a bit of data. I do love looking at the stats and seeing what's going on. That's always quite interesting. Yeah. I mean, if you did have a bigger listenership, I mean, I think that comes from marketing and, those things. It's not to do with the quality of the podcast. It's to do with, way you can pick up the audience and make an effort to do the marketing to get that. But if you did have a bigger audience and it was more of a kind of even a commercial concern, then I think one of the things people have to consider in making podcasts is kind of consent agreements. Let's start looking into the legalities with their guests. I mean, we've just done this. We trust each other. I trust you on the editing. You trust me to not say anything awful, and we go ahead and not start a rights dispute afterwards. There are templates online that people can use that would address with their guests, ownership, copyright, where the guest has to indemnify them against any claims if they would have, infringed somebody else's rights. If there's any liability, where that sits. But I think that's also quite straightforward. I mean, maybe I say that because I have a lot of experience in contract drafting and management, but I think it's all quite straightforward, really, if you did, need to do that or had to do that.
I don't think, if you're thinking of doing a podcast, I don't think it's something you even need to think about because you're in control of the editing. If somebody says something outrageous, you take it out, obviously. There's just no situation I could imagine where that would be necessary. If, however, you're talking to somebody famous, then they may insist on editing rights afterwards. But you're into a different area then. In our podcasts, we've never had anyone on the panel who ever wanted to have editing rights. If they did, I would have said that's fine and let them listen to it. And we certainly I've never given any thought to IP, intellectual property rights or libel or anything like that.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody needs to think about it. Don't let that put you off doing a podcast.
Exactly. And I think sometimes these like little things can become stumbling blocks for people in their kind of quest almost for perfection. It's better just to start cautiously and carefully, but to start rather than to let kind of imagined risks get in the way of actually doing something that would be interesting and a good learning experience, if nothing else.
But that's the key to it, Amy. You've just said it. Just start.
Yes.
Because everything we've talked about is free. I mean, you said some of these things are $20 a month, but that mounts up. If you had $20 for that and $20, but it's free.
Yes.
It's free every month.
Yes.
So in the end of the year, it's free. And each individual item is free. Spotify is free. Substack is free. Audacity is free.
And it's a creative endeavor. And I think there's a creative part in all of us. And we should tap into that wherever, in whichever direction that we can, whether it's making art or podcasts or theatre. All of these things are what make us human. So I fully support that, Bill. I have a question, which is, how do you find podcasts that you like?
Oh, they are always oral and not video.
Me too.
And the ones that I listen to are full of heavy content. They are content rich. A lot of them are BBC programs. I do like BBC. Unfortunately, for the UK listeners, you can classify me. I'm a Radio 4 person. There are some brilliant programs like In Our Time.
I'm going to make a note of these. I'm always on the lookout for good podcasts.
The Rest is Politics. There's the whole Goalhanger series of The Rest Is. Some of them are very good. The Rest is Politics is one that is particularly good.
I have listened to that, but politics for me is such a heavy cloud right now that I tend to steer clear unless I really want to know about a topic. Yeah,
I find that condenses it quite well. The thing is that a lot of them got advertising now.
Yes.
The Goalhanger series is a commercial podcasting thing with Gary Lineker, which is why it's called Goalhanger.
Ah, okay. I'm not a football person, so
that was his nickname in the day. The BBC ones obviously don't carry advertising.
There's one I quite like, Feel Better, Live More by Rangan Chatterjee. He's a doctor, but he really believes in kind of people taking natural approaches and changing their lifestyle to help themselves. I like some of his guests. I like the guests that are very authentic and down to earth, but he does have a lot of guests that are very full of themselves, and I like them less. So I like that one. There's one that I listen to literally when I'm running called Run Pod by Jenny Falconer, and she literally talks to runners, but it gives some motivation to go a bit faster. And then there's another podcast How to Fail by Elizabeth Day. That's a very popular one. And she gets people on to talk about their failures. And she has interesting guests, but what frustrates me a little bit is often their failures are not really failures at all. And it's like, oh, I only got 3 A levels and I should have got 4. And I'm like, oh, come on, be real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she even says that about some of her guests, that she doesn't feel that their failures are very honest. But she has nice conversations, and I like that. I like to hear people talking about real life, and I especially like real people talking about real life, not just celebrities and famous people. But that's quite hard to find, actually.
It is. It's very hard to get people to realize that they are interesting.
Yes. Yes, well, I think everybody's interesting. Everybody's got a story, but, getting to it and getting the trust and the relationship to get to that level often takes some time.
I think storytelling is so important. If people would maybe learn to or practice telling their own stories and practicing and rehearsing it in a way that makes it really interesting for the listener. People are a little bit keen on telling their stories from their point of view with the word I, the first person pronoun.
Yeah, the concern for the audience is not maybe in the forefront.
Yeah.
And we should have concern for the audience because also, in a private setting, if you don't want people to be bored when they're talking to you.
Yeah.
I wanted to say that into the podcast I was on, a lot of them commented on what a fantastic host you are and, really natural. And you have an ability to hold, kind of the structure of a discussion between quite, a number of people. And I wanted to ask you, how do you do that? And is there an optimum number of voices that you like to work with?
I've fallen into an awful lot of facilitation roles. So I do enjoy it.
We have a stereotype that an extrovert has to be a very bombastic, loud person, and an introvert has to be a sort of quiet person who doesn't talk very much. Maybe I don't see it in the normal lens.
That is a common description of introverts and extroverts. An introvert gets their energy from silence, from being quiet, from thinking. Having to talk or having a lot of people around them is exhausting. Whereas an extrovert gets their energy from talking. The noise, the to and fro, they get energy from that. I just get exhausted.
Would you like to expand a little bit on the bite-sized snippets that people might have researched because of what you told me about Winston Churchill earlier? Because I thought that was very interesting.
Winston Churchill and Oscar Wilde and some of the most famous raconteurs and people famous for their language and words are also well known to have rehearsed their little epithets, their little apparently spontaneous sayings before they attended the dinner party. If you're giving a talk, it's very common to write down, to draft your talk as if it was a post or an essay. And the result is very long sentences.
Yes.
With multiple clauses and subclauses.
People may prepare and then they want to say what they want to say and it comes across as a big long monologue, or they don't prepare at all because they think they'll lose spontaneity. And what you're suggesting is quite a clever balance between the two, which is think of some little hooks and sound bites that you can go with that then expand a spontaneous discussion that's in an interesting direction.
That's absolutely it. Let's say you write it out longhand as a paragraph and you find that it's 3 very long sentences with subclauses in them. What is the single 10-word statement that gets you to the heart of that paragraph? And how could it be said better? Then you take out the adverbs. Always take out the adverbs.
Going back to what you were saying about Winston Churchill, one of my favourite things that he said or wrote was, I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have time.
I'm not sure that was Winston Churchill, but thought it was someone else, but never mind. But it's absolutely right.
It is right. The editing process takes a lot more time than the first pass. Same with books.
Having the core statement and being ready with it to say it when you get your chance on a podcast or in a meeting or anywhere is important.
Have we discussed all the elements of podcasting that we wanted to discuss?
Thank you very much indeed. I've enjoyed that.
I've really enjoyed it. And you've certainly reignited my ambition to do a podcast. So I think it sounds very doable and it's on my list of things to do.
The thing that I would recommend you or anybody to do is just go and do it. Just start it.
Always just start things because otherwise starting is the hardest thing. And once you've started, things take on a life of their own. Good. Thanks, Bill.
Okay.